All right, hey folks, we're going to go over writing a purchase agreement directly out of the MLS today. Now, please go back and watch Buyer 101 prior to doing this. It will make sure you have all of your ducks in a row and you follow the proper steps prior to writing an offer. Now, a couple things to note. Today is a sample purchase agreement as if we are representing the buyer. We are going to assume you already have a buyer broker agreement signed because that is required prior to showing any houses. I am also going to write a best case practices contract. Now, this does not mean this is how you would do it every single time. This is just a sample for a lot of you to follow. Now, what I like to recommend as best practices for our coaching clients is when you go to write a purchase agreement or an offer for one of your clients, especially on the buyer side, I want you to write a sample contract or follow this video, write a purchase agreement, and send it to me as your coach before you ever send it to your buyer to sign. The reason why is we may have an opportunity where we can tweak some things, make sure everything's filled out properly, etc. And then you can send it, get it signed, and move it on to the seller side to get it hopefully accepted. Now, I am not going to go into detail about what each paragraph means. I'm just going to walk you through how we would fill each paragraph out. When it comes to explaining the contract in detail, you have three resources that you should be taking advantage of. Number one are the learning links that RAR provides. Michael Lafayette, who helped write all of these contracts, is an attorney and represents RAR and can go over all of these contracts in much more thorough and better detail than any of us can. So please, please, please access those learning links. They've been provided to you on a Google document. They're also at learning.rarrealtors.com. If you need help accessing those, just reach out to me. Now, your second resource is your contract class, which we are getting back to doing once a month, sometimes twice a month if there are changes, and that is with our in-house broker. He will go over in detail any changes that have been made, as well as what each paragraph stands for and what you need to recognize with your clients. And then lastly would be if you are able to write a purchase agreement or sample offers and you want to set up time to go over one with me, we can do that, whether it be in one-on-one or in our group coaching. So let's go ahead and get started. I have pulled up one of my listings. Obviously, it is pending under contract. That does not matter for the sake of training and video purposes, but you would access any listing that you want to write an offer on. Remember, in Buyer 101, we talked about the supplement stage. You can get to the residential property disclosure here. You can also get to lead-based paint, etc. You can also access those when we get to a transaction desk. So we're going to click this TD button. And it's going to bring you directly to transaction desk. Now, I've heard comments before whether to use DocuSign or AuthentiSign. I have always used transaction desk and AuthentiSign because it is provided to us through RAR. This is some of what you pay your fees for. And so it's a good habit to have where you can just go ahead and use the tools that are provided to you. Now, this looks a little bit different because we've walked through this before. However, typically it's going to ask you for a template. You're going to pick the KWMC purchase side template, and it's going to give you some forms that are required on the purchase side. Now, not all of these are required. This is just what it template modifies to. Now, what you want to recognize is to make sure you're using the most up-to-date purchase agreement or forms. This says 7/2023, which should be a red flag or a signal in our head that's not the right one. Click the little plus sign. Then you can click CVR purchase agreements, and you're going to scroll down. It's about halfway down for purchase agreement. Now, this says revised 11/2024. That's how we know we're using the right one. I click add, and it's going to add it to our forms. Now, again, this is just the purchase agreement side video. So we may have affiliated addendums and documents that will depend on the client, their situation, the house itself, etc. We're just going to go over the purchase agreement today because this is how you're going to get practice. So we click this purchase agreement, and it's going to pull up a somewhat pre-filled in document. Now, because we click that TD, it's going to go ahead and start pulling in certain information. Now, you're going to date it for today that you're writing the offer. You're going to put your purchaser's name here. In this case, I put myself, again, for training purposes. The seller's name should auto-populate, as should both the listing broker and the buyer broker. Now, if these are both the same name, it means we are dealing with a designated agency situation. If you're representing the buyer and the seller, it's a dual agency. Both of those will require an addendum prior to the offer being accepted, so be aware. Now, if you see Keller Williams Richmond West and then Keller Williams Metro Center, those are different brokerages. Even though we're under the same Keller Williams umbrella, we have different firm IDs, and you do not have to worry about it then. Real property, it's going to describe what the property is by address and legal description. Just confirm it's the address you want to be writing an offer on. Personal property included. Without getting too much in the weeds here, this is anything that's already fixed to the property is going to be in this paragraph here. If you want to do best practices and you want the refrigerator, the washer, and the dryer to convey, we're going to write those in here. The following addenda are made part of this agreement. It is not built before 1978, so we don't have to worry about that. And we shouldn't have to worry about any of these addendums either. Now, if you are adding those, such as an escalation clause or an as-is addendum, or you're letting the seller stay longer, you can click those. If it is a contingent sale, you'll click for right of first refusal. Again, training for another day. Because we're practicing a sample contract, we're not doing any of these. Now, we're going to write in our purchase price here. It will auto-populate the written form out there. Type of financing. If you are paying cash using a bank wire or certified funds, you check the first box. If you're using a loan, you check this second box. You're going to fill out the type of loan, conventional, FHA, VA, VHDA, also known as Virginia Housing now, USDA, or other. If you are using other or hard money or seller financing, you would click this and then type that in there. For this training, we're going to assume it's a conventional. Now, in the principal amount, this is the loan amount left after closing or after down payment. So if you're putting 20% down, this is going to be 80. If you're putting 3% down, this is going to be 97. If you're putting 10% down, this is going to be 90. This is the loan amount. It says it right here. Now, best practices, you always want to check at the prevailing rate of interest at the time of settlement. Your client will most likely lock in their interest rate with the lender prior to settlement. However, we do not want the interest rate changing to be a reason why this contract is no longer valid or it becomes voidable. So if you check at the prevailing rate at the interest time of settlement, you will be okay with that. Now, most loans are 30 years. If it's a 15-year loan, you can put 15 here. We're not requiring any discount points in order to be qualified to buy this house. It is okay if your buyer is going to put money down to buy discount or origination points. However, we do not require it for this contract to exist. If the seller is paying any closing costs, you would put this in this first blank. Let's say we're asking for $5,000. If the seller is offering to pay buyer brokerage fees or you want to ask for them, you're going to put them as a percentage here. If it is offered as a flat fee because you've had that conversation with the listing agent or builder, you can skip the percentage part and put in the flat fee. 9 times out of 10, I'm going to lean towards a percentage, and I'm going to put that in this second block. Now, these are separate categories. So if they are saying they're paying 10 grand to buyer broker compensation, that does not mean your purchaser is getting 10 grand or $10,000 in credits. That means $10,000 is being used for buyer broker compensation. Please do not get these two confused. If you're using a loan and the lender has not given you an appraisal waiver, it is subject to an appraisal. Deposit. Typically, this is 1% of the purchase price. We will talk about this a little bit more in detail on the Buyer 201 training. However, the higher number you put here, the stronger your offer will look. Most of the time, the MLS will say 1% deposit required or something of that nature. We're just going to go ahead and put 5,000 here. You're going to put your settlement company in this spot. Now, it is always up to the buyer or the seller in either case, their right to choose their own settlement agent. We can make suggestions, and yet they can choose their own at the same time. There is a difference between a settlement agent or an attorney, and you want to make sure they have their option to pick one. They may put a deposit down in the form of check, deposit link, also known as a wire or a mobile app, and then or other would be if they're paying another way. It's typically one of these two options, and you will give them 5 to 7 days for will pay or if they've already paid it, you can check this box. Typically, I do 7 days and will pay. Now, this is important. We'll talk about this more in the contract classes. However, your buyer needs to be aware that they need to put this deposit down within those 7 days. They are days on the calendar, not business days. This deposit will count towards their cash to close. However, it is what holds the property off market for them. Now, closing date, you're going to set this according to whatever you and the listing agent and the buyer decided. Let's just say it's a 30-day close. Obviously, that's Christmas. So that's not going to happen. So we want to make sure our attorney offices are open at all that week. And if they're not, they may be open on the 30th or the 31st. Scroll down. They do plan to occupy. It is subject to the residential property disclosure, and that is attached. Section 13, if the property is in an HOA, you will check yes. If it is not in an HOA, you will check no. This property is in an HOA, so we will check yes. If it is an optional HOA, meaning the homeowner does not have to join, you can check is not. Inspection. We're not going to talk too much in detail about this because, again, go to your contract class and look at the RAR training that is offered. Well, we will talk about this a little bit more in detail in Buyer 201. However, I want you to be aware that this is where you would fill out your inspection timeline. Best practices are 10 days. If you put nothing here, it defaults to 10 days. So that's why it's best practices there. If you can get a little bit more time, that is okay. You don't want to put too much shorter than 10 days unless it's being asked by the seller, because you have to not only do the inspection, you have to get the report, provide the seller with all of the inspection reports, cost of repairs, and purchaser's written repair request within those 10 days. So you want to make sure you have ample time to do the home inspection, get the copy of the report, write up the repairs request, and send that over to the seller. You may also need certain specialty inspections, whether it's a structure engineer, radon, etc. All of those inspections have to be done within these 10 days. So give yourself ample amount of time. Now, you cannot, as the purchaser, request the seller to perform any inspections. So that's why we mentioned the seller side here, because or the specialty side here, because you have to do it all within 10 days. This talks about the negotiation periods. Again, we'll talk about that in Buyer 201. Best practices, optional paragraph, not applicable. A lot of listings will require you to mark this box not applicable in the agent-only terms. The reason why is because this is requiring the purchaser to at least submit a repairs request prior to terminating. Okay, if it is checked is applicable, you're saying that, hey, we're not even going to ask you to fix anything. If we don't like the inspection, we're just going to terminate. Instead, we want to give the seller a chance to fix what is wrong with the property, so we check is not applicable. A couple more paragraphs here. Home warranty. If you'd like to ask for a home warranty covered by the seller, you can click Elects. You will need to put the brand of the seller or of the home warranty here. Now, there are certain warranty companies that have different levels of coverage. So in this case, Shield Complete is their top of the line home warranty provided by American Home Shield. So you can be very specific. You can also just put the brand of the home warranty company. You can put the cost. This can be a cost that is equal to the coverage, or it can be a certain credit amount towards the coverage. And then you would put paid by the purchaser or paid by the seller at settlement. Now, if you don't want a home warranty, you just simply click declines and leave the rest blank. Occasionally, a purchaser may want a home warranty that is more expensive than what the seller is willing to credit. So they may say, I want a Shield Complete. Those are $500. I'm only getting $400 from the seller. And then you can write in the additional terms. Purchaser will cover the difference to order the Shield Complete home warranty. Difference to be paid at settlement. Now, back to the MLS side of things. Occasionally, you will see agent-only terms that will have certain things like, although no known defects, sheds, fireplaces, and chimneys convey as is. Please include it in the offer. You can copy and paste this language and put it right here in the additional terms. If you are doing a seller extended possession or nicknamed rent back, please do not put that in the additional terms. There are addendums for those type of things. Same thing with escalation clauses. If you're waiving any type of inspection repairs, none of that should go in this category. That should all be put on an addendum. If you ever need help with language on what to add for additional terms, see Chris Heron, our broker. You can also ask me, and I will most likely connect you with Chris, but we will all make sure we're on the same page for what language is being put here. Now, if the property is served by a well and septic, you will check these two boxes. If it is served by city sewer and water, you will check these two boxes. This house is considered or is done by city, so we're going to go ahead and check city or municipal on both of those. We do not need to worry about anything else. NA is what's typically done if we're not asking for termite inspections to be done on any other properties. Occasionally, there are outbuildings or sheds that you may want inspected. Take that up with your client or your purchaser, and be aware that you have to ask the seller to cover those type of things in this category on the seller inspections being done. It is typically the seller's responsibility to do a termite inspection. Section H is referring to the repair limit specifically to well and septic and termite. So if you are not on a well and septic, it is city sewer and water. This category is only applying to the repair limit from termite damage. If it is left blank, it defaults to $1,000 maximum. Now, this repair limit is not referring to your home inspection. It is just referring to, in this case, termite. Now, I do not like blanks on contracts, so I will go ahead and write in the repair limit, even though it defaults to that. We don't want to leave anything unspoken for. Scroll down a little bit further, and you're going to give an acceptance deadline. Typically, we give 24 hours. Sometimes you may need to give more or less. Again, that is why we call the listing agent prior to. If I am writing an offer on a Thursday and they do not plan on reviewing offers until Monday, this does not mean I have to give a window all the way until Monday. It does mean that if I give a window until Friday evening, after that time passes, my offer is no longer valid. I have to go resubmit with the new acceptance date in order for them to be considered in the offer review period. So just keep that in mind with your client. Now, again, typically I give 24 hours or thereabouts, and then we would go to signing. Now, there may be other forms that you need to have included in the signing. However, for an authentisign quick lesson, you would click this little pin, and it's going to pull up a new authentisign for how to sign this purchase agreement or how to send it to your buyer to sign. Now, before you would even get to this stage, you would have saved it as a PDF. You can also click this here to download it and email it to me as your coach so we can proofread it together before you send it to your buyer. However, once we've given you the green light, you can add participants, add from transaction. The buyer should already be in there from when you set up the transaction before. You click here and you click there, and it should auto-populate. Now, if you need to add somebody new, you just click Add New. You can put their information in. You can click the role as buyer, save, 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 and it will do the same thing. Then you will click Send, and it will send it for signatures. That is a quick rundown or scenario of how to write a purchase agreement using the transaction desk. There is a separate video on how to do a buyer-broker agreement, and we will begin doing more samples in group coaching where you guys will be writing offers to try to win listings for prizes, etc. And the more you practice this, the better you will be, and the more equipped you will be to using transaction desk and authentisign. Stay tuned for Buyer 201, where we'll go over what happens once your offer is accepted. Thank you for watching, and as always, reach out if you have specific needs, questions, or concerns. We're here for you, and we look forward to helping you sell more houses. Talk soon.